Hey everybody, what's up? It is 3 a.m. Actually, it's 4 a.m. at the time of recording this. So you know what that means? This video is going to be a bit rambly. My ideas will be all over the place because I didn't get a lot of sleep. I had exams. I had a exam actually, and I failed the exam. So since we're already on the topic of failure, let's talk about Arknights because I've been failing pretty badly at this game. And I just want to share my experiences with you. So hey, if you feel bad for me failing the exam, you should leave a like on this video. If you don't feel bad, you should leave a like on this video. Just leave a like on the video anyway, you're already here. Look, I'm not gonna lie, I had this recording tab opened for 5 minutes and then went to click on something else in Arknights and completely forgot about it. So I may have had an idea for this video, but it's gone now. So with that being said, let me tell you about my overall impressions, because I do think that's at least relatively important. And I do think it's also nice to consider exactly kind of what I've been feeling just in regards to sort of getting back into the game, starting over, trying to learn mechanics of things, because you've seen certain bits and pieces. If you watched the 3-8 video, you know that I was very, very displeased with that stage. And if you listened to the video prior to that one, you know that I disliked the fact that a bunch of information just isn't given to you as a new player. And I still stand by that statement. I feel like a lot of the information that the game does give you is relatively useful. However, the problem is that a lot of the information it tries to throw at you that is very helpful down the line, it isn't necessary then and there. And therefore, as a new player, it's very easy to just gloss over all of that. An example being how resistance works. Does anybody know? I don't, but I know how defense works. Defense was actually introduced at a time in which I needed it. It made sense. Hey, this guy has heavy defense. How do you know? He looks like he has heavy defense. You know what? You need a caster. And that was a very simple line of thought to follow. And as a direct result of that, I kept that in mind going forward. I place casters down when I feel like I need to, depending on the enemies of that stage. Even if I don't know the enemies going forward, if I see there's a high defense enemy, I usually at least have 1 or 2 casters with me at the time. This becomes a problem, however, when there are so many enemies introduced that you don't necessarily know what they do. And I understand that in a vast majority of circumstances, the enemies aren't necessarily going to wreck you, but it still is something to consider because a lot of times these enemies are either much more powered up versions of previous enemies you faced off against. For instance, the slugs or little slimes that crawl across the ground that then just become red and are much stronger because, red equals strong. And that isn't necessarily an issue until later on when random boss enemies gets thrown into there and you don't necessarily know how to deal with them. And then there are Vanguards and Guards, and I've mentioned this previously, there are so many different branches of these separate classes that it makes it very difficult to say, oh yeah, I build this Vanguard for this reason. I understand that Myrtle is great, and I know that she's really useful. However, if you're trying to explain that to somebody else, how would you explain it? Oh, she gives you deployment points? Cool. But if you throw her down like a normal Vanguard, then she's useless. When instead the recommendation is, hey, bring Myrtle along and also bring another Vanguard too, because Myrtle isn't really going to be doing much guarding for you. Or if you're discussing the individual guards, why not explain the difference between certain guards in a much more clear and concise way? For instance, Lapland, she's lowered. She can attack enemies from range, and that's really, really good for aerial-based enemies. However, the issue is, if I'm explaining to somebody else, or I'm trying to get them to understand, hey, use this guard over this guard, or even if that's being explained to me, the issue is there are so many different branches that I don't know about that I could be using one guard and deploying them down thinking they do the same thing as another, when in fact they don't. If you're looking at somebody like Melantha, she is a duelist. She only blocks 1 unit. And so you have this issue in which individuals who place down Vanguards expect the Vanguards to be deployed earlier and then replace them or follow them up with a guard later on. But your Vanguard may end up blocking more than your guard. If I'm using Melantha as my actual guard and Texas as my Vanguard, then Texas is blocking more than my guard. Or the fact that you'll have certain guards that just quite legitimately cannot be healed by other units. Or you have certain guards that deal arts damage in particular. And this does provide you with some flexibility because you can bring somebody like Mouse on with you and she can do something else that's very, very unique in the event that you actually are dealing with high defense enemies and you need a guard. Then she's useful, but the problem is this isn't in any way, shape, or form mentioned to you. The game very briefly goes over guards, vanguards, medics, and casters, and so on. And that's fine for the early stages, but when they begin to matter, and when the subclasses of these guys, when the branches of these individuals matter a lot more, there is no information to be found. And even if you're an individual who states, oh yeah, that should be up to the player to look at that, well, are you really going to expect the player to say, oh yeah, the game taught me this, therefore that's how this works? When the game has taken the time to teach me about different specific classes, like this is what a guard does, this is what a vanguard does, and the tutorials they give you with certain units help you reinforce the information they explain to you, I thereby am expecting that at some point further on, I should either learn more, which is what the game does attempt to teach you later on. For instance, the game teaches you that most of the time ranged opponents will attack the most recently deployed operator. That is useful information. So if it's teaching me stuff about how the enemy's AI will work, then why does it not choose to teach me the information about the branches for the units that I use? Because that does play a heavy impact. I know I can place Lapland down to deal with a certain amount of ranged units or a certain amount of area units for a time before I can get an adequate caster or an adequate sniper out there. But if you're an individual who's just picking up and building the units that you like, then you may not know a lot of that information going forward. Or you may not understand the difference between different casters or different medics, whether one's AoE, whether one just is single target based, or what specialists even do. And the game does teach you this to a degree. It teaches you about Shaw and push and pull units too. But the vast majority of the time, you won't be using the other ones unless you actually know what they do, because nobody wants to waste resources. Ultimately, you don't want to put a bunch of resources into building up these units that you may not end up using. And if you're a later player and you actually have a fully built up squad that you can use in most stages with extra units that are really well built up, then sure, you can delegate time and resources to building up other units. But as a new player, I have a roster of units that I only know what some of them do. And Arknights is a game that makes it very easy for you to build up a different unit and build up a bunch of units of different rarities and find them all to be good. But the problem is, I think most individuals gravitate towards higher rarity units. You're going to build the 5 stars, the 6 stars first, and that can be a mistake, sure. But if that isn't in any way, shape, or form communicated to the player, then it's very difficult to get them to grasp that concept, because in most gacha games, you have to look at it as high rarity equals better, and low rarity or starter units equal bad. When in this case scenario, a lot of those starter or low rarity units can carry you through the game. And it's a lot cheaper of an investment to make than building up the 5 and 6 star units. So it's a slippery slope that I find. Don't get me wrong, I like this game and I do continuously play it. I do pop on here and there at the very least. But I feel like this game does have the issue in which there is so much information that you can learn, and half of that isn't necessarily communicated to the player. I wouldn't know about a lot of the information that I know about now if I didn't necessarily have the ability to just pop into the Arknights section of the Discord server, join if you haven't already, and ask questions. And we do have an active help channel there, which makes it very useful. But if you're a player who just got into the game and is trying to figure this all out, your options are guides, which, don't get me wrong, are very helpful, but a lot of individuals won't seek those out. And if you don't have somebody else to sort of carry and guide you through the process, it's not only of setting up your squad, but who to build next and what to prioritize and what each unit does, then you're left with a lot of information. Game Press, for instance, has great information and great analysis on characters. I actually go there a lot for annihilation guides. But the issue is that if I'm looking at a character and I'm trying to rate their skill, there is a very weird chance and a very high chance that I won't know what I just read. Or if my unit is Elite 1 and they have access to 2 skills now, I won't know which one is realistically better, because both of them sound good, but one could be drastically superior than the other. For instance, Liskarm gives SP points to a random ally whenever she is hit. This is useful, but I didn't know how to calculate that. I didn't know who the SP was going to. So I kind of just used her as a regular defender, and now I found out, oh wait, she's great with Lapland. Or other units that have great skills. Cool, I'm glad the game actually told me this. And I could go on, but look, it's like 4:30, I am tired. You probably noticed the dip in the clarity of my voice throughout this video. If you haven't, then hey, good for you, you can understand me. But I'm going to make a part 2 on this. It's probably going to be more clear and concise, where I actually go through certain points, but I want to write that down. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below, consider subscribing to the channel. Heading over to the Discord server would be greatly appreciated. I want to reach like 2.5k by the end of the year. But thank you to everybody who's watched, and I hope to see you next time.